The African sun had barely touched the horizon when the screams began. In the golden grasslands of Kenya's Masai Mara, a wounded lion stood surrounded by 8 hungry hyenas. His name was Jabari, which means brave one in Swahili. And on this morning, he would prove exactly why he earned that name. Blood dripped from his broken front leg, an injury sustained just 3 days earlier in a brutal territorial fight. The hyenas smelled his weakness. They smelled opportunity. They had no idea what they were about to face. Rangers from the Kenya Wildlife Service had been monitoring Jabari for 3 years. They knew him as the undefeated king of the Eastern Territory. They knew him as the lion who had never lost a single cub to predators. But when they arrived at the scene that morning, even these experienced men felt their hearts sink. One injured lion against 8 hyenas was not a fight. It was an execution. They parked their vehicle at a safe distance, unable to intervene, forced to witness whatever nature had planned. Behind Jabari, huddled in the tall grass, his entire world waited in terror. 4 small cubs, barely 3 months old, pressed against their mother Zara. The smallest of them, a cub the rangers had nicknamed Tamu, trembled uncontrollably. These cubs had never seen hyenas this close. They had never smelled the death that hung in the morning air. They only knew that their father stood between them and the circling shadows, and that something terrible was about to happen. The hyena clan was led by a massive female, scarred from dozens of battles. She had learned long ago that lions were dangerous, but injured lions were opportunities. Her clan had not eaten well in days. 4 tender cubs would feed them for a week. 1 wounded male was all that stood in their way. She called to her clan with that haunting laugh that echoes across the savannah. 8 voices answered. 8 killers began to close the circle. Jabari assessed the situation with the cold calculation of a seasoned warrior. His front leg screamed with every movement. The bone had been shattered when a rival male had landed on it during their fight. He could not run, he could barely walk, but he could still fight. He could still kill. And most importantly, he could still buy time. Time for Zara to escape, time for his cubs to survive. That was all that mattered now. Zara understood her mate's intention the moment their eyes met. They had been together for 4 years, raised 4 litters together. She knew what he was telling her without a single sound. Take the cubs, run, do not look back. Her heart broke in that instant, but her instincts took over. She began nudging the cubs, preparing them to move, waiting for the moment Jabari would create. The morning air grew thick with tension. Hyenas paced and circled, testing distances, probing for weakness. Jabari turned slowly, keeping his eyes on the largest threats, ignoring the pain that shot through his body with every step. The rangers counted silently. 8 hyenas, 1 lion, 9 hours until sunset. The math was simple and brutal. This lion would not survive the day. The first hyena made a quick dash forward, testing Jabari's reaction. He spun faster than anyone expected, a thunderous roar exploding from his chest. The hyena retreated, but only a few meters. They were learning his speed, measuring his strength, planning their attack. It was only a matter of time now. What happened over the next 9 hours would become legend in the Masai Mara. Rangers would tell this story for generations, because Jabari had something the hyenas could never understand. He had something worth dying for, and he had a plan. To understand what Jabari did that day, you must first understand who he was. 7 years old, and in the absolute prime of his life, Jabari was not just any lion. He was a king who had built his kingdom through blood, courage, and an unbreakable will to protect his own. His black mane, thick and wild, had become legendary among the rangers who patrolled the Masai Mara. They called him the Guardian of the East. And he had earned that title through years of proving that nothing would threaten his family while he still breathed. 4 years earlier, Jabari had arrived in this territory as a wandering nomad. He was young then, hungry, and searching for a place to call home. The territory was controlled by 2 aging brothers who had grown lazy and weak. Jabari challenged them both in a single night. By morning, he stood alone as the new king. It was during those first weeks that he met Zara, a young lioness with golden eyes and a fierce spirit. She was the only female who did not flee when he arrived. Instead, she watched him with curiosity, then acceptance, then something deeper, Together, Jabari and Zara built something rare in the African wilderness, a partnership forged in trust and strengthened by time. 4 litters of cubs they raised together over the years. Not every cub survived, for the savannah is unforgiving, and death comes in many forms. But Jabari held a record that no other lion in the region could claim. He had never lost a single cub to predators, not to hyenas, not to leopards, not to rival lions. His vigilance was absolute, his protection unwavering. The rangers had documented his defensive encounters over the years. Twice he had driven off hyena clans attempting to take his cubs. Once he had killed a leopard that wandered too close to his family. Another time, he had fought 3 nomadic males simultaneously, sending all 3 fleeing with wounds they would carry forever. Jabari did not start fights, but he ended them, every single time. This reputation kept most threats at a distance. Most predators knew better than to test the Guardian of the East, but 3 days before that fateful morning, everything changed. 2 young nomadic males had entered the territory, bold and desperate for their own kingdom. They attacked at dusk when Jabari was alone, patrolling the borders of his land. The fight was vicious and brief. Jabari killed one of them within minutes, his powerful jaws crushing the younger male's throat. But the second nomad managed to land on Jabari's front leg during the struggle. The crack of breaking bone echoed across the plains. Jabari finished the fight, despite the injury. He always finished his fights. The surviving nomad fled into the darkness, never to be seen again. But the damage was done. Rangers who examined Jabari from their vehicles confirmed their worst fears. His front leg was shattered, the bone visibly displaced beneath his skin. For any other lion, this would be a death sentence. A lion who cannot run, cannot hunt. A lion who cannot hunt, cannot survive. For 3 days, Jabari barely moved. He stayed close to Zara and the cubs, conserving his strength, hoping somehow his leg would heal enough to function. Zara brought him scraps from her hunts, feeding him like she fed their cubs. The rangers debated intervention, but ultimately decided to let nature take its course. They had seen injured lions recover before. They had also seen them die. The hyenas had been watching. They always watched. They had seen the territorial fight, heard the sounds of battle, smelled the blood on the wind. They knew the great Jabari was wounded. They knew his leg was broken. And on that 4th morning, they finally made their move. The hyena clan had been planning this attack for 3 days. Their matriarch, a massive female with a torn ear and scars covering her face, had survived 12 years in the Mara by knowing exactly when to strike. She had watched Jabari limp back from his territorial fight. She had seen him struggle to stand. She had smelled the infection beginning to set into his wound, and she knew that the great Guardian of the East was now vulnerable. The time had come to take everything he had protected for so long. 8 hyenas gathered in the darkness before dawn. They were hungry, desperate, and confident. The clan had not made a significant kill in nearly a week. Cubs meant easy meat, tender and abundant. One wounded lion was the only obstacle, and wounded lions did not last long against coordinated attacks. The matriarch had killed injured lions before. She knew exactly how this would end. By nightfall, her clan would feast on the flesh of Jabari's cubs. She was certain of it. At exactly 5:47 in the morning, the first hyena appeared on the ridge overlooking Jabari's resting area. Then another. Then another. They spread out in a wide arc, cutting off escape routes, boxing in their prey. Zara saw them first. Her head snapped up, ears flattening against her skull, a low growl building in her throat. The 4 cubs, still half asleep, sensed their mother's fear and pressed closer to her warm body. Something was very wrong. Jabari rose slowly, painfully from his resting position. Every movement sent fire through his shattered leg. But pain was irrelevant now. Only position mattered, only strategy. He scanned the approaching hyenas, counting them, measuring distances, calculating odds. 8 against 1. Impossible odds for a healthy lion. Suicidal odds for a crippled one. But Jabari was not thinking about himself. He was thinking about the 4 small lives huddled behind him. Tamu, the smallest cub, peeked out from behind his mother. At 3 months old, he was significantly smaller than his siblings. The rangers had worried about him since birth, wondering if he would survive his first year. He had never seen hyenas this close before. Their strange laughing calls terrified him. He tried to burrow deeper into his mother's fur, wishing he could disappear completely. He had no idea that in a few hours his father would risk everything specifically for him. The hyenas began their approach in a classic hunting formation. 2 moved to the left flank, 2 to the right. 3 positioned themselves directly in front of Jabari, while the matriarch held back, directing her soldiers with subtle movements and calls. They would attack from all sides simultaneously, overwhelming the injured lion, creating chaos, then targeting the cubs in the confusion. It was a strategy that had worked countless times before. Zara looked at Jabari with desperation in her eyes. She could fight, but not while protecting 4 cubs. She could run, but not faster than 8 hyenas. She needed time. She needed a miracle. She needed her mate to do the impossible. And when their eyes met across the golden grass, she saw something in his gaze that broke her heart and gave her hope in the same instant. Jabari turned his back on the hyenas for just a moment. He looked at each of his cubs one by one, the 2 larger males already showing hints of their father's courage, the female golden like her mother, and little Tamu trembling, terrified, the smallest and most vulnerable of them all. Jabari memorized their faces. Then he turned back toward the circling death and made his decision. He stepped forward, placing himself directly between his family and the 8 killers. There would be no retreat. There would be no surrender. Zara understood immediately and began gathering the cubs. Jabari looked at her one final time. The wind stopped. The birds fell silent. Even the hyenas paused their circling for just a moment. It was as if the entire Masai Mara understood that something sacred was about to happen. Jabari stood motionless in the golden grass, his broken leg trembling beneath his weight, his eyes fixed on Zara and the cubs behind him. This was the moment. This was the choice that would define everything. And every creature watching knew that this wounded lion had already made his decision. Zara moved first, nudging the cubs with her nose, urging them to stand. The 3 larger cubs responded immediately, instinct telling them to obey their mother without question. But little Tamu remained frozen, his eyes locked on his father's massive silhouette against the rising sun. He did not want to leave. He did not understand why they had to go. Zara gently grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and pulled him to his feet. There was no time for hesitation. Jabari watched them prepare to flee, and something shifted in his chest. Not fear, not sadness, something deeper and more ancient than either. It was the same force that had driven fathers to sacrifice themselves since the beginning of time. The knowledge that his life meant nothing if his children did not survive. The understanding that this broken body still had one final purpose. He was not a lion anymore. He was a shield. He was a wall. He was the last thing standing between death and everything he loved. The matriarch hyena sensed the shift in energy. She barked a command to her clan, and the 8 predators began moving faster, tightening their circle. They could see the lioness preparing to run. They could see the cubs gathering behind her. If the family scattered now, the hunt would become complicated. Better to strike immediately, create chaos, separate the cubs from their mother. The matriarch locked eyes with Jabari and saw something unexpected. She saw a lion who was not afraid to die. Jabari released a roar that shook the very ground beneath them. It was not a warning, it was a command. Go now. He did not look back at Zara. He could not afford to. Every ounce of his focus had to remain on the 8 killers surrounding him. He heard the soft padding of paws behind him as Zara began leading the cubs away. He heard little Tamu whimper as he struggled to keep up with his siblings. Then he heard nothing but his own heartbeat and the laughing calls of the hyenas. Zara ran as fast as the cubs could manage, which was not fast at all. 3-month-old cubs cannot sprint like adults. They stumble over rocks, get confused by tall grass, tire quickly in the morning heat. She knew the hyenas would catch them within minutes if they gave chase. Everything depended on Jabari holding their attention. Everything depended on a wounded lion doing the impossible. She did not look back. She could not afford to. The rangers in their vehicle watched in stunned silence. They had witnessed countless predator encounters over their careers. They had seen lions fight hyenas dozens of times, but they had never seen anything like this. A lion with a shattered leg, standing alone against 8 attackers, deliberately drawing their focus so his family could escape. One ranger raised his camera with trembling hands. Whatever happened next needed to be documented. The first hyena attacked from the left side, aiming for Jabari's injured leg. It was a smart strategy, targeting his weakness, expecting him to collapse under the assault. What happened instead shocked everyone watching. Jabari spun with impossible speed, his massive paw connecting with the hyena's skull in a blur of claws and fury. The sound of breaking bone echoed across the savannah. The first hyena dropped instantly, its neck broken by the force of Jabari's strike. It had underestimated him. They had all underestimated him. A wounded lion was supposed to be weak, slow, easy prey. But Jabari was not just any lion. He was the guardian of the East, and his broken leg had not broken his spirit. The remaining 7 hyenas scattered backward, their confident laughter replaced by uncertain whines. The matriarch barked commands, reorganizing her clan, one dead in the first seconds. This was not going according to plan. The sun climbed higher as the first hour of battle unfolded. The hyenas adopted a new strategy, attacking in coordinated pairs while the others rested. They would wear him down through exhaustion, bleeding him with small bites, never giving him a moment of peace. Jabari understood their tactics immediately. He had fought hyenas before. He knew they were patient, intelligent, and utterly relentless. But he also knew something they did not. He did not need to win. He only needed to survive long enough for his family to escape. By the end of the first hour, Jabari had sustained multiple wounds. Bites on his hindquarters, scratches across his flanks, a deep gash above his right eye that sent blood streaming down his face. But he had not yielded a single step. He remained exactly where the fight began, forcing the hyenas to come to him, using his position to minimize the angles of attack. Every movement was calculated. Every roar was strategic. He was fighting not with rage, but with the cold precision of a warrior who knew exactly what was at stake. The second hour brought the relentless heat of the African morning. Temperatures climbed toward 35 degrees as the sun blazed overhead. Jabari panted heavily, his tongue hanging from his mouth, his broken legs swelling grotesquely beneath the strain. The hyenas panted too, but they had numbers on their side. When one tired, another took its place. Jabari had no such luxury. He was alone, wounded and fighting against time itself. But still he stood. A young male hyena, eager to prove himself, launched a reckless attack directly at Jabari's face. It was a fatal mistake. Jabari ducked beneath the leap and caught the hyena's belly with his claws, tearing it open in a single motion. The second hyena fell screaming, its intestines spilling onto the golden grass. 6 remained now. 6 killers against 1 crippled lion. The odds were still impossible, but they were improving. The matriarch watched her second soldier die and felt something she had not experienced in years: doubt. This lion should have collapsed by now. This lion should be begging for death. Instead, he seemed to grow stronger with each passing minute, as if some invisible force was keeping him upright through sheer will alone. She did not understand it. She could not understand it. She had never encountered anything like the fire burning in Jabari's eyes. 3 hours into the battle, the Rangers made their first radio call. Their voices trembled as they described what they were witnessing. A wounded lion fighting 8 hyenas, 2 hyenas dead, the lion still standing. They requested backup, more witnesses, anyone who could document this extraordinary event. Word spread quickly through the Ranger network. Something unprecedented was happening in the Eastern Territory. Something that defied everything they knew about survival in the wild. Jabari's vision blurred from blood and exhaustion, but his ears remained sharp. He could no longer hear Zara and the cubs. That meant they had traveled far enough. That meant they were safe, at least for now. The knowledge gave him strength. The pain became irrelevant. The fatigue became meaningless. He had bought them time. Now he just needed to buy them more. The sun reached its highest point, and still 6 hyenas circled. Still Jabari stood. The longest hours were yet to come. The midday sun transformed the savannah into a furnace. Temperatures soared past 38 degrees, and the air shimmered with waves of brutal heat. Jabari stood in the center of this inferno, his golden fur matted with blood and sweat, his broken leg now swollen to twice its normal size. 6 hyenas still circled him, their tongues hanging low, their eyes never leaving their wounded prey. 5 hours had passed since the battle began. 5 hours of constant fighting, constant bleeding, constant pain. And still Jabari refused to fall. The hyenas attacked with renewed ferocity as the heat peaked. They knew that exhaustion would claim Jabari soon. They knew that no lion could sustain this level of combat indefinitely. The matriarch coordinated a 3-pronged assault, sending her strongest fighters from 3 different directions simultaneously. Jabari met them with everything he had left. He killed the 3rd hyena with a bite that crushed its spine, but the victory cost him dearly. New wounds opened across his shoulders and back. Blood pooled beneath his trembling legs. For a moment, Jabari's vision went completely black. His legs buckled, and he dropped to his knees in the scorched grass. The 5 remaining hyenas surged forward, sensing the kill. But something extraordinary happened, something the rangers would later describe as impossible. Jabari rose again. Slowly, agonizingly, he pushed himself back to his feet and released a roar that sent the hyenas scrambling backward. He would not die on his knees, not today, not while his cubs still needed time. 2 kilometers away, Zara led the exhausted cubs through a rocky outcropping. They had been traveling for hours, and little Tamu could barely keep his eyes open. She found a shaded cave and ushered the cubs inside, counting them as they passed. 1, 2, 3. She counted again. 1, 2, 3. Her heart stopped. Tamu was not there. Somewhere along the journey, her smallest cub had fallen behind. Panic seized her chest as she faced an impossible choice. Stay with the 3 cubs or go back for the 1. Tamu had collapsed in the tall grass, nearly 200 meters behind his family. His tiny legs simply could not carry him any further. He lay hidden in the vegetation, trembling with fear and exhaustion, calling for his mother with weak, pitiful cries. He did not see the hyena that had broken away from the battle. He did not see it tracking his scent through the grass. But Jabari saw. Even through the blood and the pain and the exhaustion, Jabari saw. The hyena was racing toward Tamu at full speed, abandoning the battle for easier prey. It would reach the cub in seconds. There was no time to think. There was no time to calculate. Jabari did the only thing a father could do. He ran. On his shattered leg, through the blinding pain, he ran faster than any wounded lion should be capable of running. He intercepted the hyena just 3 meters from his smallest son. The impact sent both predators tumbling through the grass. Jabari's roar shook the earth as he stood over Tamu's trembling body. The hyena retreated, shocked by the speed of the wounded lion's response. Tamu looked up at his father with wide, terrified eyes. For one brief moment, their gazes met. Then Jabari nudged his son with his bloody nose, pushing him toward where Zara's scent still lingered. "Run, little one. Find your mother." Tamu obeyed, his tiny legs carrying him away as fast as they could manage. The cost of that sprint was devastating. Jabari collapsed the moment Tamu disappeared into the grass. His broken leg had finally given out completely. The 5 remaining hyenas surrounded him, sensing that the end had finally come. The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. Jabari lay in the blood-soaked grass, his chest heaving with labored breaths. The 5 remaining hyenas circled slowly, their patience finally rewarded. They had waited for this moment through 9 brutal hours of combat. The great lion was down. The guardian of the East had finally fallen. The matriarch approached cautiously, her scarred face twisted with savage anticipation. She had lost 3 of her clan to this wounded warrior. Now she would have her revenge. Now she would feast on his flesh while life still flickered in his golden eyes. The rangers watched in devastating silence. They had witnessed the entire battle, documenting every moment, every wound, every impossible act of courage. Now they prepared to witness the end. One of them turned away, unable to watch the final moments. Another wiped tears from his weathered face. They had seen death countless times in the Mara, but nothing had prepared them for this. Nothing had prepared them to watch a hero die. Jabari heard the hyenas closing in. He felt their hot breath on his fur, smelled their hunger in the evening air. His body screamed for surrender. His muscles begged for rest. Every logical part of his brain told him the fight was over. But somewhere deep in his chest, a fire still burned, an ember that refused to die. He thought of Tamu's terrified eyes. He thought of Zara leading the cubs to safety. He thought of the 4 lives that depended on him holding on just a little longer. The matriarch lunged for Jabari's throat, ready to deliver the killing bite. What happened next would be told around campfires for generations. Jabari moved. Impossibly, inexplicably, the fallen lion moved. His massive paw caught the matriarch across the face, sending her tumbling backward with a howl of shock and pain. He was not dead yet. The guardian of the East was not finished fighting. Jabari pushed himself upward, his shattered leg dragging uselessly beneath him. He could not stand properly. He could barely lift his head. But he forced himself up anyway, inch by agonizing inch, until he was facing his enemies once more. The hyenas froze, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. This lion should be dead. This lion should have surrendered hours ago. Yet here he was, rising from the grave, refusing to accept defeat. The sun touched the horizon, painting the savannah in shades of gold and crimson. Jabari gathered every last fragment of strength remaining in his broken body. He thought of his father, who had taught him to fight. He thought of his cubs, who would carry his blood into the future. He thought of Zara, the love of his life, waiting somewhere safe with their children. Then he opened his mouth and released the roar that would become legend. The sound exploded across the Masai Mara like thunder. Rangers 3 kilometers away heard it and stopped their vehicles. Animals throughout the territory lifted their heads in recognition. It was not just a roar. It was a declaration. It was a promise. It was the voice of a father who would not let death claim him until his family was safe. The 5 hyenas felt that sound in their bones, in their blood, in the ancient part of their brains that remembered why lions were kings. The matriarch broke first. She turned and ran into the gathering darkness, her tail tucked between her legs. One by one, the others followed, abandoning the battle they had been certain to win. Within seconds, all 5 had vanished into the shadows of the savannah. Jabari stood alone in the crimson light of sunset, swaying on 3 legs, covered in wounds that would never heal. 9 hours, 8 hyenas, 3 dead, 5 fled, and every single one of his cubs alive. Jabari had won. Remember that terrified little cub who almost did not escape? The one who fell behind, too small and too weak to keep up with his siblings. The one whose father ran on a shattered leg to save him from certain death. That cub's name was Tamu, and his story did not end in that bloody grass. It was only beginning. But first we must say goodbye to the lion who made that future possible. We must honor the father who gave everything so his children could live. Zara found Jabari the next morning beneath an acacia tree. She had traveled through the night, following his scent, praying to find him alive. What she found broke her heart into 1,000 pieces. Her mate lay motionless in the shade, his magnificent body covered in wounds too numerous to count. But when she approached, his eyes opened. He was still alive, barely breathing, unable to move, but alive. He had waited for her. He had refused to die alone. The 4 cubs gathered around their father for the last time. They pressed their small bodies against his bloodied fur, not understanding why he could not stand, not understanding why he smelled like death. Tamu curled up against Jabari's chest, listening to the fading heartbeat of the lion who had saved his life. The rangers watched from a distance, their cameras forgotten, their eyes filled with tears. Some moments are too sacred to document. Some goodbyes are too painful to witness. For 2 days, Zara never left Jabari's side. She groomed his wounds even though they would never heal. She brought him water in her mouth, even though he could barely swallow. She lay beside him through the cold nights and the burning days. Her body pressed against his, sharing whatever warmth and comfort she could offer. This was not just instinct, this was love. The same love that had bound them together for 4 years, the same love that had created 4 beautiful cubs. On the second evening, as the sun painted the Mara in shades of gold and red, Jabari took his final breath. His eyes were fixed on Zara's face when the light left them. The rangers recorded the exact time, 6:47 in the evening. 9 hours after dawn, he had won his impossible battle. 48 hours later, he lost his fight against the wounds that victory had cost him. The guardian of the East was gone, but his legacy would live forever. What would you sacrifice for the ones you love? What price would you pay to give your children one more day, one more chance, one more breath? Jabari answered that question with 9 hours of blood and pain and unbreakable courage. He answered it with his life. Not every father gets the chance to prove his love so completely, but every father carries that same fire somewhere deep in his heart. The willingness to stand between danger and the ones who depend on him. The refusal to surrender while his family still needs him. The rangers reported that only 1 in 100 lions could survive what Jabari endured. They called it the longest recorded lion versus hyena battle in Masai Mara history. But statistics cannot capture what truly happened that day. Numbers cannot measure the size of a father's heart. Data cannot explain how a broken lion found the strength to roar one final time and send 5 killers fleeing into the darkness. 2 years have passed since Jabari's sacrifice. His 4 cubs survived. They grew strong and healthy under Zara's watchful care. And today, one of them rules a territory in the eastern Mara. His name is Tamu, the smallest cub who almost did not escape. He has his father's black mane now, he has his father's golden eyes, and the rangers say he has his father's heart. If Jabari's story moved you, type his name in the comments to honor this incredible father. Subscribe to join our pride and witness more stories of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Because Jabari's story is extraordinary, but he is not the only hero in the African wild. Stay with us to meet the others.